human-centric solutions for fighting the pandemics, and of course the solutions that are data-based. We also, during those calls, we connect the people who are working on those human-centric approaches, and we also give the contribution or give our comments to improve those solutions, to make sure that they're human-centric, they're better, and they serve the community and the world. Today we have 4 presentations. We will hear from Iain, Andre, and Antti working on MyData Commons. We will have the presentation on COVID Safe Paths, which is global community-driven movement to work on the tools to fight the pandemics. This is from Greg and Nishant. That will be followed by the presentation from Jeff from MyData Brussels Hub on disposable identities, and we will also hear from Louise on the COVID self-reporting solution. We will have a bit of change in the agenda because unfortunately Nishant cannot join us, and Greg will join us in an hour. So we will actually go with the MyData Commons, identities, self-reporting solution, and then when Greg will join us, then we will speak about the COVID Safe Paths. So just shortly, why we started those calls and why we promote a human-centric approach, data-based approaches to fight COVID, why we think this is important, and this is the topic to discuss and make sure that the human-centric approach is actually the leading approach in fighting the COVID with the database solutions. We like very much the comment or the quotation from Harari. He said this in March for the Financial Times, that we should not be forced to choose between the privacy and health, that this is the false choice. We should be able to enjoy both privacy and health. And MyData as the solution, MyData as a concept, as an approach, actually promotes the privacy and promotes the opportunity to good services that also in this particular case of COVID-19, provide us with better health. And just shortly, for those who are joining us for the first time or still want to refresh your memory about what is MyData, what are those 3 shifts that we talk about in the declaration, and what we actually stand for. Here is the slide to remind us that MyData is about fair, sustainable, and prosperous digital society, where people get the value from their data, but also the organizations promote the ethical use of data, and that the ethical use of data is always the attractive option. And those 3 shifts that we talk about are from formal to actionable rights, from data protection to data empowerment, and from closed to open ecosystem. So this is MyData in a nutshell. This is something what MyData Declaration explains, and this is what we also want to promote through those calls and through presenting those solutions. And if you want to promote what you work on or get the consultation on is my solution good enough, those calls and this community is a place to go and to check. And I speak about the community because this is the MyData Global is the organization, is the legal entity behind the global community of change makers from all around the world, from more than 50 countries, with the local hubs in more than 20 countries. And we are joined today by the speakers and by the participants from all around the world. and also with there is my colleague and boss Teemu Roponen from MyData Global. Teemu, would you like to give some short, I don't know, maybe addition to what I said or greetings to the community from you?
Thanks, Kudra, and hi everybody. It's Teemu here. So I lead our staff. Great to have us all on the call. And Kudra, I think you did just a fine job. Not much to add, but maybe just one or two things on the mind right now. I mean, first of all, the rather ironic in some way, a positive side of the COVID-19 is that indeed the topic of health and privacy and personal data is very much in the topic of discussion nowadays, both in the scope of COVID, but also more widely, and politicians and policymakers, policy shapers being more aware of these issues. So in many ways, there's great opportunities to influence now also. So in addition to of course, attacking the crisis itself, let's be sure to tackle any opportunities that we see to shape the policy. One very current one right now, by the way, is not relating to COVID per se, but to the policies, is the EU data strategy, which is out for consultation still for about a week and a half. I'll put the link on the chat, but really beyond the scope of this call, but relevant probably to many of us on the call. But yeah, great to have you, and I hope you can first of all find yourselves to the MyData Slack if you're not there, with 2,200 people, and of course as a member of the MyData Global Association as well, where we have, like Karo says, 91 organizations at the moment and hundreds of people from over 50 countries. But with that, I'll give it back to you, Karo.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And of course, if you're not a member yet and you would like to become, you're more than welcome. You're just one step away from joining this wonderful global community, as I said, of change makers. And now, what about this change? What about all those solutions that we speak about and we promote? Let's start with the presentations, and the first one will be on MyData Commons and derived credentials, principles, and demonstration. I know that we have Iain and Andrew here, okay, and this is not Markus Hautala, but Antti presentation. So I will now stop sharing my screen and I will let Iain share your screen. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi folks. Yeah, I would just like to build on what Teemu was saying about the positive side of COVID-19, which I think is certainly I and multiple others have spent most of the last 2 months working on COVID-19 type solutions. And frankly, we would not have been doing that if COVID-19 hadn't come along. We're working on all sorts of other wacky, more typical data projects. So I've got about 6 or 7 slides here, most of which are very complex, and I don't propose that you try to digest all of them because I'm going to share them all afterwards. They're really there just to set up and tee up the demo that Andre is going to do, which I think is about an individual in charge of their own data. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right, so.
That's better, thanks.
Yeah, this is us. So slide 1, I'm going to try and summarize what just happened, which essentially is the virus has won and the human race has lost. Right? We were completely outgunned. We did not have the armory to deal with what just happened to us. What I mean specifically by that, the problem is global. Right? The virus acts globally. It doesn't respect borders. So therefore, solutions would ideally have had to operate globally. But basically, that was never going to be the case because our data is currently organized at a country level. So if one sees that, in an ideal world, we would regard it as a global citizen management challenge. with medical, societal, and economic implications. And when it comes to citizen management challenges, they're actually quite a well-known, there's well-known methods for dealing with those kind of things. It's all about building databases and models and segmentation and analytics and communications and nudge type activity, which would be fine if we had a global database and could do all of that stuff globally. But the reality is, as I say, we are fragmented, focused on the critically ill, reactive, and largely ignore the bottom-up data that people contribute for themselves. So the organization-centric model has failed to deliver in this period. Again, another complex slide, but essentially very early on in, say, early March, a bunch of us in the MyData community, we were all in multiple hackathons. And we came up with the concept of a data commons, which you could simplify as a data set buy-in for the people, bottom-up volunteered data that's not designed to replace the top-down data that we all see on the news every day. It's really just designed to augment it with what the individual can contribute for themselves. If one was to design such a thing, it's clearly not just a dumping ground where people can upload a whole load of sensitive data so that organizations can do what they like. So this model was evolved in the Hack COVID hackathon. It's quite precise about data sources. It can come from people themselves, it can come from devices or sensors, or it can come from labs. It goes through an ingestion process into the data commons, which is a highly governed data set. And then it comes out of there in various forms, some of it for the people, some for the public, and some for the health authority. And if such a data set was available, it could be used for many, many different things. So essentially, this was a hypothesis about how could we build such a global view from the bottom up rather than top down. So what does that mean in practice? Essentially, we've spent the last 6, 7, 8 weeks trying to turn that into some form of reality. This slide here, it originates with the MyData principles of the individual should be the point of integration. The individual should be in control of their data. And all those little blobs around the guy are all the stuff that an individual has to deal with around about COVID-19. So it's a gigantic disruptive force. So again, we don't have time to go through all of this, but the one breakthrough I think we've made is we've realized that the decentralized identity specification from the WC3 organization, I think for the first time actually allows us to deliver on that promise. Can you genuinely put an individual in charge of their data and act as the point of integration? I think up until now, it's been a nice set of words, incredibly difficult, if not possible, to deliver in practice. And if one can then put an individual in charge of their data, you could also then bolt on the MyData Commons concept, which is the individual can contribute their own data into this mix for the overall benefit. Pushing on, again, I'll circulate the slides afterwards. These are just screenshots from the various things that we've built, very much in prototype mode. Left-hand side, you've essentially got a mobile app. You then have a commons data set. You have analytics as to who's moving around between different segments. You have an audit log, and you have verified credentials side of things, which is what we're going to have a look at now. So, Andre, over to you to demonstrate the concept of the digital wallet and the derived credentials.
Excellent.
And we're allocating time at the end for questions. I'm sure there will be quite a few.
Thank you, Iain. So we are showing a demo of particularly a selection of the arrows that you have seen on Iain's slide, and I'm going to share my screen. So you should be able to see my screen on the left-hand side, the web browser, and on the right-hand side, the wallet app on my smartphone.
We see it very well, yes.
Right. So basically, what we have done is we have created a demo for well, we call it Corona status, whatever that means in the end. So we will leave it for you to decide. So basically, it's coming from the CCI initiative, COVID Credentials Initiative, and it started off with the use case number 2, proof of immunity by exposure. We are very much aware that these terms are not resonating too well in practice. However, this is where it originated. So this is basically where we started off from the business requirements perspective. So, and you can see here, this is the entry page, and on the right-hand side, basically an empty wallet, which is completely based on Hyperledger Aries and connects to Hyperledger Indy-based networks. And in this case, we have chosen Sovereign as the platform to do it. We have started off with Esatus test ledger, but we have changed it to the Sovereign staging net. So as you can see, you can click through here and you see all the infos and details. So you can basically always click on more details and understand better what our thinking was behind that. And what we are doing with the demo is iterating through these 6 stages, which you can outline here. And you're in the shoes of Paul, who wants to have verifiable credentials for certain things. And you always can, on these pages, click on these more details, so you get more info and rationale on the thinking. We've also collated all that in a Google presentation where you can look at in it without going through the demo, and also use it for commenting. So the first step is you have to install a wallet app, so which we have already done. What's important here is that you select the right ledger to do it, and you can change the ledger in the settings. And as you can see, we have already selected Sovereign staging net. So this is also compatible with other types of wallet. And we are currently testing. I think there were some issues found, but we are resolving them with other wallets. So for example, it should work with Streetbet as well. So what we are doing first is actually build a connection to the demo system. And this is just one connection for basically all the different issuers which we are handling now, because this is just for the demo. So, and you see that we have successfully added the connection, and you will see here in a second that the connection was built. And again, you can always click on the more details, but now the next step is already invoked, so that we receive an antibody test result from a lab, which is one of the issuers, and it was an antibody test result which has been positive, so which means that Paul would have had the disease before and has built antibodies, but now we see that we have the confirmation that this antibody result was positive. We may want to add at a certain stage of maturity also the testing method, so that we can in fact include some more assessment status, how efficient and effective the test is. So we accept the credential. And it was stored, so I now have it here in my wallet. You can see the details of the credential, and this is all on my smartphone here. So you could also move it to a cloud-based agent, but this is basically what we consider most privacy preserving at this point in time, that the end user has it on his wallet. So you see that it was accepted and confirmed. So we're already at the next stage, and here we can decide. And this is the employer now issuing a credential, if we are a critical employee or non-critical, so key worker or non-key worker. So we select, we are a critical employee, so we get a new offer, credential offer. And this is now about the employment status for my employer. So key worker is yes, I accept that. From that. So, and as soon as we have accepted that, we will move on. So successful and moving on. And now, this is the stage where we get the Corona certificate, which means that we have a rating that was also developed in this group here with Antti and others, along if you're a key worker or non-key worker and immune by exposure with a rating. And the rating schema we can look at later. So it's basically also in a document that was provided. So if we have an A4 rating, this means we are a key worker and are immune by exposure, and a B4 is non-key worker immune by exposure. So what I have to do now here is to in fact confirm the data that I've just received from my employer and from the lab, and send the details to the service, which is should be a trustworthy service, which exactly produces this logic. And we have confirmed the proof request. And now we get in turn a credential, which exactly confirms this A4 status. And this is what we call a derived credential, because it's derived from the information that we have provided before. So I accept the credential. And you can see now that I have all the three of them here. So I have the antibody test result in the wallet app, I have the employment information, and the derived credential, which is the verified status. And yeah, I have it in my wallet, and I have accepted it. And in the next stage, obviously, I can use it. So, and that's obviously the purpose, what we are intending to do with it. So anybody can in fact issue a proof request against these credentials, and particularly this one. So proof request is there. And I click send. It was successfully sent. And yeah, I was confirmed that I have the A4 classification based on this last one, the last credential, which is the derived credential. And yeah, so basically what we are building now here is that people can use it wallet to wallet. So basically you can show your credential with a QR code to someone else, and confirm wallet to wallet that in fact this credential is there and valid. Yeah, that's basically the demo. So what you can do is run that yourself. You can install the wallet app. You can access the web page. I will share it in a second in the chat as well. And yeah, we are looking forward to comments and refining that and making it even better. And yeah, hopefully people are interested to make that work in practice as well. Yeah. So that's from my side the demo, and looking forward to questions. I stop the sharing now.
Yeah, so that's as far as we think we can go, and clearly we've showed an awful lot of complexity there. But I think the key point is we believe we're showing an individual acting as the point of integration in an empowered way in a COVID-19 scenario. So we think that's a breakthrough, but it'd be good to take your comments and questions and thoughts.
Okay. Thank you, Iain and Andre, for this presentation and also demonstration. And I see that there is already a first question from John. I will read this, but I also invite you all to write your question in a chat or raise your hand to speak. Maybe John, if you would like to unmute yourself and make a comment or ask your question.
Sure. The declaration, Iain and I are both involved with JLink, which is part of the underlying technology. So I'm excited about this. But the civil liberty implications of an immunity passport that you could be required to display in a number of circumstances have some autonomy, sort of anti-MyData implications. So one of the things that I'd be looking for is a way to build into the protocol or the designs a restriction that says the only entity that can ask for the passport is a legal health authorities, that police or employers or communities, so it doesn't become a tool for social stigmatization. Now, I don't know if that's in scope of what you're designing, but I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that.
I think that's absolutely spot on, John. I mean, bear in mind, we're still just in prototype mode, so there's no live data about any human other than myself, frankly, inside it. But if we go back to that screenshot, that's our high-level spec that basically says the data can only go with the control of the individual, to appropriate places. So some of that data will go purely to the person, some is more publicly accessible, some is only to the health authority and the individual. But those rules around how that would always err on the cautious side. So I think we know what you're saying. We've not yet built it in practice. Does that help?
Well, the devil's always in the details, but yeah, I mean, when we first sketched this out, this is exactly the use case that I had in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe another context from my side. So actually you can obviously decide which information you disclose on your own. So we have just seen in the proof request that there was a bunch of things that you were asked to disclose. And if you're not comfortable disclosing them, then you don't do it, but then you probably will not benefit from the service. And I totally see the point that we would like to restrict certain key information to authorities or desired institutions which can access them. So I think this is currently not built in the technology because it's just zero knowledge proof based verifiable credentials. And this is maybe something that could be directed to the open source community development. So what we are doing here is just leveraging everything that's there and also leveraging solutions that are coming from my companies, and which is also the MyData member, Esatus AG. So we are using basically the underlying technology to build such a use case. And there's another question in the chat as well. Is this going to be open source? So in fact, the whole backend is basically has been developed over a couple of months with a significant developer team now. So we are trying to employing that with our customers for identity and access management, but we are considering to make certain components of it available so that we can in fact give some kind of an instance of it to people to do open source work, so that they can in fact get all the benefits of it and try it out and see how it works in the backend. So we have just recently implemented a multi-tenant component of it, so we can basically spawn certain tenants for whatever use and client use or open source and non-profit use. So I think we will have something like that soon available, and we are just discussing internally how to manage it best.
So, any more questions?
I'm just wondering whether the feasible approach, I mean, the information sharing agreement that you use to instantiate the MyData Commons could specify that only health authorities. Is that something that's relatively easy to set up with the verified credentials in the data commons infrastructure, where the commons says only credentials that have been verified from these sources will be allowed to access that data? Is that a technical or a sort of legal solution?
Good question. Yeah, I think there will be a way to do that, but I think we need to come back to you on that one.
It depends. I mean, currently, technically, you can just trace back where the credential was coming from to validate which issuer has issued it. So this gives you a certain level of confidence that you can trust the issuer. And what we are currently doing is, obviously, this is just a DID registry, a public DID on a ledger. So you don't know actually who is behind it if you have not another verified channel to understand this DID belongs to whatever organization, MyData, Isatos, whatever. So we are currently working with GLIFE, which is the Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, and to basically factor in a vetting process for their records that they can enhance them with public DIDs. So you would have a mechanism to tie back a verifiable credential and the DID issuer to this GLIFE record, so you know who in fact is behind it. So we're building a little bit more in the trust chain, but this is not guaranteeing that this credential cannot be shown to anyone. So it is in fact a feature of the technology that you can use the credential as you deem fit and not restrict it. Yeah.
Fair enough. I am less concerned about me choosing to show the thing, although in certain authoritarian societies, your choice would be limited. It's to provide assurance for automated data flows where there's an authority from the public health to know status and contact tracing or something like that, to make sure that those requests are from a verified credential from an authorized issuer.
I think I can give a little bit more ideas on that. So in fact, you can basically on the connections that you make. You have seen that we have done the connection in the beginning. You can decide, look, everything that comes via this connection, I want to auto accept and auto prove. So if you get a credential via this connection, you are not you can configure your agent to automatically accept it, and vice versa. You can configure it that it automatically will answer all the proofs that it can. So this is giving you a little bit of choice, but I think we probably would need more granularity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this lively discussion and also raising very important points. I hope we can continue the discussion through the chat and also afterwards. So thank you, Iain and Andre, for your work and for sharing with us. And now I would like to invite thank you, Jeff, joining us from the Brussels hub to tell us about the disposable, if I pronounce it well, apologies, identities. And Jeff, I wanted to ask you if you would like me to share your presentation, or will you share your screen yourself?
I will share it myself,
right.
so I control the pace a bit.
Wonderful. So please take the floor, and you will have some 15 minutes for presentation and questions. Great.
Yes, so yes, disposable identities, where does it come from? Where does it go to? First of all, maybe some little introduction on how I came in contact with it. Yeah, I was hosting Brussels hub of MyData, and I had several sessions on identity and how that impacted your data control. And I came in contact with other team from IoT world, and also more connected with, let's say, political and philosophical ideas. And we kind of found each other in this concept of disposable identity. And so that became into an organization now. Over the course of 2 months, it's really been crazy. Starting from May 15 somewhere, just before in the lockdown or the beginning, where we organized ourselves forward towards an SME call with about 20-30 people, SMEs. And now we're already organizing into a foundation, but I'm going to tell you what their background really is. So how did we get there? And that was by a general concern that about identity value extraction. And like Iain already mentioned on the left side, a lot from the known parties, of course, from commercial world, who've been very active in value extractions over the past years. And this picture here is, let's say, a photo of the situation 2017. But on the right side, on the red side, you see also a lot of state-issued identity initiatives as well, from the EU particularly. And so this is not just the private sector, but also the public sector have been very active on trying to get a grips on their identity issues. On the other hand, we as citizens, that's what we represent with our organization, think that we doubt that this is a scenario going forward in 21. Does this captured identity story really need to continue the way we have known it? Largely
Jeff,
driven.
apologies for interrupting. Would you put on the full screen your slides? There is a wish to see it better.
Sorry, I didn't.
No worries.
Is it okay now?
No, we are still seeing in the like editing mode, not full screen.
Sorry,
presentation mode.
me.
Yes, yes, here we are.
Right.
Fantastic, thank you so much.
So
yes.
full screen. So yes, this captured identity situation where identity is very much controlled, of course, by the known actors, again, for this purpose of, either legally required identification on one hand, and on the other hand, from more commercial aspects of algorithmic usage. The bottom line is we are getting harvested, our data is getting harvested, I would say, and repurposed without our control. Yeah, that's basically what we at MyData also want to prevent. So now, what is missing, of course, is the individual in the middle, as Iain's design also showed. And how about its protection as well in this space? And online experiences, and other public authority conversations or connections. So where is this individual? Where is his control? And what do we offer for him soon now in this COVID relationship? We'll come to that right after this. So with disposable ID, what we want to do to answer that is to come up with a way that we can use pseudonymous IDs and consents that actually accompany every single data exchange and hard code sort of a protocol in the protocol, the GDPR rights. Not relying on legal and legal proof, but on cryptographical proof. That was our aim with disposable ID. And what we wanted to do is, of course, stop this data capturing abuse from different parties. And we believe that that we have an alternative. And with the COVID situation, we had the opportunity actually to find a much broader audience, and among scientists, but also politicians, industrial people as well, and saying, yes, this might be the moment to use this to go forward. So this user-controlled identity, we wanted to package that into a mobile SDK so that what we saw is that all these initiatives going for COVID apps were not really aware on how to do that. So we wanted to provide an SDK with all these whistles and bells built in so that they could safely use it in their apps. And now quickly we moved on to open sourcing it within a organization, a stichting, Belgium legal form, we call TWIND. And because we needed some protection, we needed some vehicle to get funding, so both reasons, and also to control who can use the open source. It sounds a bit strange, but what we want to do is really, invite usage only for if it applies to our principles. We got a very strong support from a larger developer community. And as a basis underlying, we're using Zenroom cryptography framework for also coconut credentials. And also it has recently implemented the TP3T proximity sensing algorithm already since 3-4 weeks. So it is a quite strong base to use, to build on. And what we came up with is embed that sort of a disposable identity into a sort of a health certificate that can be read using barcodes, color-coded barcodes from one of our participants in our initiative, UPC in Finland. So that is a part of the kit, I would say, the development kit that we are working on right now. This is a clear use case that we are talking with lab test providers, and the kind of scenario that we want to support is first in line is the individual who creates a disposable ID, which is a temporary identifier, not directly correlated to his main DIDs and things like that. So this has a very short-lived and time span. It is used to inside the test results, and the test results themselves are also a disposable ID. And of course, then you have the whole workflow of storing that privately, but having sort of a reference to that storage on a blockchain, so that these kind of credentials, like we saw from Iain and from Andre's case, can of course be attached to it. So we're not focusing on what Iain and Andrea is doing, but we really like to use that credential as well. And we're also not making an app, like I said, but an SDK. Okay, this is some details I would like to skip. But basically, provide a mechanism where we actually, the user has the keys, of course, and he can create multiple main DITs on his local machine or its local smartphone. And the disposable IDs are actually derived from these main DITs. And yeah, like you see in the picture here, these credentials, maybe those provided by Andre or others, can be attached to that, while of course the main DIT is not used at all, of course. That we know this pattern pretty well. So that's not so new. What we like to extend on this topic is this. So here we have the communication in case here the persona person wants to share some data. And here we are in the MyData field. So any kind of data, and this can be, of course, health credentials, but it also can be temperature or any other data. Yeah, what we do is we create one package with the data and sort of a consent receipt, kind of the content that is provided by Kantara, but reformatted and anonymized. And that travels with the data on private channels. So, and in this protocol, the receiving party, in this case an AI or anything that processes the data, needs to confirm the receipt of this consent, and also needs to act upon it as a sort of a contract, sort of a smartish kind of contract, so that it can prove the deletion, hence the name disposable of this identity information, and needs to provide back in the protocol a proof of that. So that's where we want to focus on. And like I said, our product, so to speak, is an open source SDK. We want to provide it on a Kotlin framework so that it can be plugged in React Native, which is very popular, but also in other kind of development languages. And the main reason, like I said, is to avoid time losing by non-crypto or SSI experts, so that they can move safely and not dirty like we have seen. And what is stopped basically now by most governments because of that reason. So we also wanted to protect kind of the direct open source developers who are working on the crypto, but that's just a minor thing, but still they were swamped in the beginning and the early days. I'm talking about 2 months ago. Also, like I said, in the SDK is built in this GDPR stuff in the form of verifiable claims. I will explain that in a little moment. And also other libraries that we deem very useful, like the Barker generator, and AI engine is on the, let's say, roadmap later on in a couple of months. But of course, the aspect of local storage is there, of claims that we receive from providers that we are, what we are not doing, but at least give the opportunity to link the identities to them and to store them locally. So how does it look like? And on the left, you have this typical kind of health credentials, like the ones shown by Andre and Iain, but formatted in a technical format that we use. On the right, it's the contract, if you want, with the kind of consent that we also know very well in this community, but formatted in the same way using verifiable credentials. So that's a little different from what Kantara does, but we take the gist out of it, and we of course we take out the personal data, but we use the same mechanism. So these two objects, if you want, fly with every communication and are closely linked to each other. And then we believe that life goes on, of course, and there's more than just an imminent crisis. The idea of disposable identities is not new. It's been around for a while in the IoT community, led by Rob van Cronenberg. And Well, we still think that it is very much in that context very useful, and specifically if in this behavioral tracking by different devices, this becomes super important, super relative, that these event data are disposed, short-term lived if you want, but also used as proof or liability, accountability in insurance, for instance. So this is one track. Another track,
Jeff, just apologies for interrupting again.
Yes.
Just being mindful about the time.
Yes, this is the last slide before.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So this is the last one. Another track in our community is more on the social side of things that they're working on, democracy-oriented aspects, I would say. So our community is not only technologists, but also philosophies. So philosophers and social people, which I think is good because we take into account these aspects. So I just wanted to mention this, that some are also working on that. So to summarize, our initiative has been started from these different kind of enthusiast people, activists, designers, developers, coming together because of COVID-19, and now we're evolving into this foundation. You can find us here on Telegram on this link, and some background information on the GitHub right there. So I thank you on behalf of these people, or the core group, Kael, Rob, Mirko, Jari, Lorna, and Kai, was also contributing to our story, and I just want to mention them for their supports.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing. And I have this presentation. I will embed it in the master deck, if that's okay. So that will be also shared with the community.
Absolutely okay.
And we have time for a short discussion or question. I say short because we still have 2 presentations to go, and
yeah.
So don't want to put the super big pressure on time, to give you also the opportunity to exchange. But of course, there is time. So I wonder if someone would like to jump in now, or would you like to then leave your comment in the chat, or contact Jeff on Slack? I don't see any immediate reactions. So I will. So please make the best use of chat and also our Slack. Without further ado, then I would invite our next speaker, Louise, to present your work, and to present the World Citizen Report, Fight Corona, so the platform for reporting the health status. Louise?
Hi everyone.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi Carolina. Hi, just started my my video. I'm just gonna start sharing my screen. I'm gonna try to comply in making it a full screen. The challenge when on the full screen is that you doesn't really see the chat, so it's just gonna take my whole screen. So Carolina, just please let me know if there's anything, comments or others for me to interrupt.
Of course.
Okay, hey everyone. My name is Louise Helliksen. I'm the founder and CEO of Bhajaria Data Company. Before this outbreak hit us all, we are a company that was founded about 1.5 years ago. Up until the crisis, we worked on building a solution based on GDPR. We had a mission to help collect, secure, and enable personal data from a privacy perspective. We've been active in MyData global community, following all the discussions globally for the past more than 1.5 years. We've done some research on our own as well, and we've seen that the challenges has been that it's complicated to users to claim their GDPR rights, as well as it's unmanageable for a lot of companies to handle GDPR. So before the corona hit, we were building a platform for the exchange of personal data based on citizens being able to do requests to retrieve their data, and as well as making it manageable for companies on the other side in order to take in that request. We ensure that it's requested by an individual that is authenticated, as well as also transferring that data back to the individual in a safe and secure manner. That's just shortly about what we did before this hit. But the reason why I'm using a bit of time of this is just because it's really relevant for this group, as well as it was the foundation of what we started building the kind of the second path in our solution towards the fight of the corona. So now it's actually over 2 months ago that we started this process. I'm gonna run a really short video putting the basis of why we did it. We felt it in our bodies. We saw the global community being infected, and we made a short video just to communicate what we're doing. So Carolina, please let me know if the sound isn't working properly. So yeah.
We are in a global crisis. We are isolated from our loved ones. We are fighting a war against something invisible. We have a collective responsibility to fight with our heroes, to shield our loved ones, to change and seek a new balance, so we can live. We couldn't watch, so we acted. We created a solution to support this global war, to give our world citizens a voice, a channel to communicate their status and their actions, so we can unite in a collective effort and fight back. We don't know where we are going, but we will continue to act. Help us fight this war and submit your status at worldcitizenreport.com.
Okay. So that's the global video and promotion of what we'd started off. We left everything that we had done, but we took the basis of the solution that we had, and we created reporting solutions for citizens all over the world to report their status, in that being their current situation. If you're experiencing symptoms, and in that case, what kind of symptoms, if you are on quarantine, if you're on a personal quarantine, so you kind of put yourself in a quarantine, the actions that you're taking, are you staying home? Are you unable to take precautions? Are you following general health recommendations? Are you working from home or having kids home, and etc.? Trying to feed back information to the public health authorities. We have worked a lot with both epidemiologists, researchers, and other communities, as well as partnered with both IBM, Microsoft, VIPS in Norway, and authentication solutions in Norway for Norwegian citizens, as well as other technology companies, in order to kind of build on and speed up what we already had, as well as complying to the needs in collecting data that could be used in fighting the coronavirus. But our basis as a company has always been to be able to let the user or the individual in itself decide whether or not you would like to report, whether or not you would like this data to be transferred to any health authorities, and how you actually would like this data to be used in this preventing work on the pandemic. So in everything that we've done, it's always been consent-based. You can see all the terms and conditions and privacy settings on our website. We've been really focused on being really clear about what the purpose is. And for this case, it's been really kind of specific when it regards to the COVID-19. Being clear about the usage of the data and being clear of what the data is going to be, how it could be transferred and for what purpose and to whom. And also giving you an opportunity to withdraw your consents if you don't want to actually transfer it to the health authorities, and being able to kind of just keep this data, the status and situation report for yourself. So we had a technical strong solution. It's scalable, it's multi-language, it's security and privacy by design. We've worked a lot with security experts and gotten security reviews as well along the way. And we've focused a lot on being really simple and easy to use in order for citizens to be able to do so. We've also we've touched a base here about authentications and IDs, and to be honest, IDs has been a bit of a headache for me for a lot of time, because it's so multiple alternatives, and especially when it comes to ensuring the real identity and preventing it from being misused. But in our approach, we've decided to kind of put in multi-level of SSOs and authentication opportunities, but also authentication levels, connecting all these levels together by matching identification points and authenticating the different data that you submit. We have worked closely towards the Norwegian government, as well as being working globally now through the Young Sustainable Impact Program, as well as with through the Microsoft Network. We are now in a position that we would like to scale this citizen report directly, and we're working on an upgraded solution of the reporting solution. I'll get back to that just in a bit. As well as we started off the past month, we've had a lot of discussions with companies, and to maybe not a surprise, because we've had a lot of discussions with companies when it comes to privacy from before, and what we are experiencing is that the privacy handling in the situation has actually just, for many, just been put aside to crisis management. And what we realized is that a lot of, especially big companies that had a lot of employees and have an unclear situation, having people at work, having critical employees working in society and being exposed to a lot of situations, there was really poor and lack of privacy handling of that data, having registrations like health data when it comes to symptoms or infections or whatever, being distributed through emails and Excel sheets, and not having any systematic way in either collecting that data or handling it, or as well as just as much kind of delivering that data to health authorities. That's kind of non-existing. So the past month, we also worked on a solution for companies connecting the World Citizen Report and an individual personal status reporting, in which is yours, to connecting it with a company solution, being able for companies to request employees to self-report. It's volunteer, of course, and here as well, the privacy is taken care of, because employees are not required to gain information about your health status. So if you're sick or if you have symptoms and etc., they're not allowed to gain that individually unless they have a health service that can handle that with the basis of data protection and handling. So we made a service for companies to actually request the same kind of data that they're asking people now by phone and Excel sheets, and managing it through a platform. I'm gonna spend just a short minute in showing some slides on how this is going to work. It's going to be launched next week, so you're first ones to actually have a look at how it's going to look. But I'm just going to run through not the full process, but just some basic steps. Let's see. Okay, so this is going to be the new website from the employer report site, as well as we got the World Citizen Report getting upgraded, which will contain, of course, a lot of information about the solution and about us as well. For companies, you can onboard as a self-service solution. And quite quickly get into the platform and start inviting your employees and gaining insights on your dashboard. So from here, this is the empty state, and you can start inviting your employees by email or using a share link in which you can embed into your company intranet, into a personal email, or whatever kind of solution that fits your company best. If you choose using the email invitation, everything goes through our platform, but you are able then to kind of design your own invitation and information about the situation and why you would like to retrieve this info. And you can upload or add email addresses and yeah, uploaded it and then send it out and see actually who's received those emails. The company, the employees then receive a link in which an email first, and a link in which they can register their information. And further down here, it's the same kind of information that you retrieve or you enter through the World Citizen Report, but it's in this case connected to the company. Just to be clear again, of course, you can at a later stage remove the connection to the company if you don't want them to continue to viewing your updates. From the company side, this is just an example of how it can look once you start retrieving data. And as you can see, it's anonymous, and we have put in measures here so you're not able to see or being able to identify employees from a certain level of or amount of registrations, because you can also get an overview of your employees and their registrations in which is not health related as of data. So this is meant for the companies then to be able to manage and monitor the situation and be able to actually comply and do means in order to prevent the virus from spreading. So this is just an example how you can then see some of the information and follow up. This is from the user's perspective.
Louise, just also mention about the time to allow us also some discussion and giving you feedback.
Yeah, thank you. I'm shutting off just a bit. I only have a couple afterwards, in which is most also about our experience so far. You can update it from here. You see your registrations, and you can also update it. And you can also, what we put in here, in which could be really interesting in time to follow, at least following the situation in Norway when it comes to tracking solutions, in which has been highly discussed in Norway when it comes to privacy. You can actually import your Google timeline, add your own locations, and define if you would like to these ones to be shared and evaluate your contact rates. I have just 2 more slides here. I've already said a bit about our principles and measures in building this solution. We highly have put kind of the security and personal data aspects first. These terms and conditions, as well as consents that follows on the collection of the data, is followed just in specification towards the COVID-19. Privacy divided design, and so far it's been developed as a non-profit for citizens, and it will be continuing to be so, but for profit by companies. We worked a lot on this multiple and combined authentication levels and SSOs, and I think that could be an area in which we would love to discuss more with the other presentations, both for today and with others. I'll just click a couple of these ones because I don't know, this could be an opening for a discussion as well, because what we have experienced is that bureaucracy and crisis beats privacy. And for everyone, I would love if you could stop by my LinkedIn and review my latest share. There are 200 experts in Norway that has signed a shared statement that has concluded that the tracking solution in Norway that's been launched by the public health authorities in Norway is not in compliance with privacy and GDPR. And we've had a really kind of disturbing situation when it comes to the bureaucracy and the lack of democracy in a country that we are in, which has a high level of democracy and privacy in our areas. So yeah, there are some other privacy issues that we've seen in which we try to work our way forward. And now we wish to continue on our path, working further on this COVID-19 solution. We are seeking partners and collaboration partners in kind of building out the service and partnering with other solutions and such. Yeah, I think maybe that could be an opening also for a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise. I think that this opens a lot of different points of for discussion, and there were already some concerns issued or expressed on Slack, and also here in chat there was the comment if it's acceptable from a data privacy perspective to know which employees have registered or not. But maybe because we are running out of time, and I also would like to give the opportunity to Greg to present the COVID safe paths, as last time he was not able to do it. But maybe just one question, and maybe also and I know that this can be a huge opener for a big discussion, but you mentioned on Slack that basically the employees don't get they get the anonymous and aggregated data, like from what you saw us from what the employees see is actually also that there were all the data, date, birth, and so on. So what's also justification for collecting? So the big concern here, I think, was the collection of all the sensitive data, like, for example, date of birth. What's the purpose of that if then the employee should get the aggregated data? And as I said, this is a huge topic. So if you can just address this shortly. And then we will give the floor to Greg.
Yeah, to address it really shortly. When you create your profile, it contains a certain amount of personal data, and as an employee, you already have these types of data, and what we are not showing for the employers are their health related data. So, but the users can also define whether or not they would like to share more data with their employees, but that will kind of when it comes to the health related data. But what you're asking here is not showing the birth date, and I wasn't really sure, because kind of the main profile, it's not containing any sensitive data, and we're not generating any information about a health related status and etc. Unless it's aggregated level of employees that has reported. So they will not gain access to viewing information that could help identify that personal or sensitive data to a specific person.
Thank you, and maybe this is actually a perfect bridge to the presentation to Greg. Greg Nadeau joining us from far away, or from very close, maybe to some, speaking from Finnish perspective. So to present us with COVID Safe Paths work, which is actually a global community-led movement that develops free open source resources and privacy by design tools. So maybe Greg, if you would like to maybe comment also on you joined late, but maybe if you would like to comment, make a bridge between what Louise said and presented and your work, and that would be great.
Well, terrific, Carolina. Nice to meet you all. And it's exciting to be part of this work together. PathCheck Foundation is an idea born out of MIT that was originally termed Safe Paths, that has become a project and a enterprise set of technology, open source technology, and really a global community and movement. I can just kind of share briefly my experience of working with PathCheck Foundation, which is I've been working in the education ecosystem space. And so a lot of my work had been focused on creating technical standards in IEEE, ISO, and W3C. And there's a whole global movement that was afoot to break us from the shackles of industrial model learning systems into more personalized competency-based systems at the scale of the internet. So that's what I was working on until March 12th. And then I got an email from a friend who was talking about this project at MIT. And so I saw that not only was it a meaningful response to the current crisis, but it was deeply aligned with my own personal commitment in life work of putting personal data control at the center of the way that we interact with each other. Since then, we have over 1,500 volunteers. We've raised some funding. We've created a nonprofit. We've done a tremendous amount in 10 weeks. So at the core, we believe that reopening society requires trust, verifiable testing, and an integrated approach to contact tracing. Let's start with trust. Trust begins with personal data control, and there's a set of work that we have been involved with, listed on the right, including the MyData declaration. But in many ways, from my standpoint, we can lose the main proposition through a lot of this work, which is that we need to say very clearly and concisely that health, education, location, contact tracing data is personal data, and that no service provider or government agency should use data other than what is generated by that entity and used only for its legitimate purposes, and should never share outside of its organization without user consent. And for that consent to be meaningful, it must be voluntary, explicit, and targeted to specific purpose or use. So that is the fundamental proposition that is at the center of how we approach the response to the pandemic. So first, a word about contact tracing. So contact tracing has traditionally been so-called shoe leather epidemiology, a very manual process, which can be extremely time consuming, but when you have a low incident rate, whether it's Ebola or some of the prior viruses, you could contact, as patient 31 in South Korea, requiring 1,160 individual contacts to backtrace and avoid further spread. In the US now, we have all of the states basically moving forward with a contact tracing solution that involves hiring, by estimates, 150,000 contact tracers. People who will be on the phone and will call people. And so this is the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins Coursera course training the contact tracers for New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And there's 6 modules, and kind of, what is COVID, what is contact tracing, and then fundamentally you get to this, which is step 3 in the process. You're on the phone, you're talking to someone who has been diagnosed with COVID, and so you ask, would you be willing to look at your calendar or phone or social media to help jog your memory about what you did this past week. So this process, we believe, can be dramatically improved. So we've got two technologies that we're developing and making available with the least restrictive open source license, which is the MIT license. So people can create derivative work, they can do whatever they want with the technology that we're developing. But it has two pieces to it. Safe Places, which is a tool for the contact tracers, for those manual contact tracers. So when they call the person, they say, download this app, COVID Safe Paths, and it will, if you had your location history turned on through Google Maps, it will ingest that into the app. It'll then parse it into 5-minute snapshots and then send it as encrypted data to the contact tracer. The contact tracer then has a slider. So you start day one. Okay, so day one, we can see that you were in this location. Okay, that was your home. Have you talked to everyone in your home? Okay, now you're at this other location, your friend's house. You know, how do we, you know, do you want to get in touch with your friend or should we? Okay, and then you were at the supermarket. Now we have no way of contacting everyone in the United States and in most places who are in that supermarket. And so we're going to delete from the contact, we're going to talk to the people at the home, contact tracer, talk to the people who's a friend, and then we're going to preserve that supermarket public anonymized potential exposure site. And then we're going to make the aggregate data set of those public anonymous aggregate data sets available to unaffected people by downloading that data set and saying whether, hey, on Tuesday, you may have been exposed. We're not even going to say it was at the supermarket. We're just going to say, Tuesday, you might have had an exposure. And so if you start getting symptomatic, you want to be a little bit more careful because you might have had an exposure. And the other side is that hopefully if we can get this used broadly enough, you might also feel more comfortable that you didn't have any exposures on Tuesday. So the third piece of this, so you got the manual contact tracing, you have the GPS-based app system, and then you have the Google Apple Exposure Network. Now, this has gotten a lot of attention across the world, obviously, because historically these companies have not worked together in something like this. But the challenge with this is that it needs to be paired at the same time. So in the United States, a recent poll showed that only 40% of Americans intend to use this, and about 75% of Americans have smartphones. So you're talking about 30% of Americans who plan on using the Google Apple Exposure Network. Because they need to be both on configured at the same time, that means it's 30% times 30%, or only 9% of transactions that would, at the most, that would be tracked in this way. 91% not tracked, right? So we think there needs to be a blended information fusion, privacy preserving solution on contact tracing. And if people don't trust it, then they just won't use it. So they can leave their phone at home, they can turn it off, change the configuration. So it's essential that we generate that trust. And I think we do that by establishing technical standards around personal data control through IEEE and other bodies, and that we create a global certification system where we say to people whether or not their public health authority is meeting the highest standards of personal data control and whether we recommend trusting. Okay, the second piece is verifiable credentials. I'm not sure how much people here, I'll just very briefly talk about the way that it works. So in Colorado, the digital driver's license, you go there and it shows you your license. It's got a little animation for that flower, and it says over 21. So it doesn't have your date of birth, it says over 21. So you go to the bartender and you QR code pair to the menu, and it comes back to the device or to their device. And it doesn't say what your date of birth is, it just says whether you're over 21, whether you meet that challenge. Okay, so in the UK, the same technology is being used to instantly verify whether doctors going to another hospital are have had their license issued by a trusted issuer. Testing. So now you want to get into a school, right? So the school says you have to have antibody tests within the last 60 days. And if you have a viral test within the last 7 days, then you must maintain a journal of your symptoms. And that's our standard. Okay, now we're an old age home. right? So there, you must have the antibody test, or you must have had the viral test within the last 24 hours. So whatever the challenge is from that institution, they use that same technology where they say, well, I trust that test issuer. And so therefore, the challenge is met back by a zero knowledge proof that demonstrates whether or not you have met that challenge without revealing any of, it doesn't say whether you have the antibody test or any of those other conditions. It just says, I met that challenge, I'm green. All of the information is on the holder's digital wallet, encrypted on their wallet, and none of the information is in a centralized database. None of the information needs to go to the verifier other than I meet that challenge. So this whole technology stack using W3C's distributed identity and verifiable credential, the Google Apple Exposure Network, our location tracking services, enabling state health data trusts to interact with each other through gateways, having this triangle of issuer, holder, verifier, and then enabling an application ecosystem that can exist on that. And importantly, noting that for every technology, there's an equally important, if not more important, set of policies that need to accompany the way that we implement those technologies. So we're working on a set of playbooks for public health authorities. We're working, we've had 52 countries around the world have asked us for help, and we have letters of intent and memorandum of understanding to do field testing. We're doing specific field testing, particularly in some of the island communities that have a little bit less mobility, and we'll go on to a different set of pilots very soon. We've got an outstanding set of advisors from MIT and across the world, and have stood up a nonprofit to operationalize this work.
Thank you so much, Greg, for this presentation and joining. And I see that there were some comments from Andre Kudra, who was presenting also his solution, the solution that he's working on previously. Andre, do you want to put your mic on? And
yeah, sure. I think that's exactly what was presented there. The triangle, the trust triangle, this is one of the core components of the self-sovereign identity framework. So this is exactly what we have demonstrated in the ESATUS Corona prototype, which I've presented as the first slot here. So and this what you're showing here is actually the trust over IP dual stack, and I think this has been discussed and now shown with the Trust over IP Foundation as a separate project and Linux Foundation in practice. So it's very cool to see that you're referencing to that. I think this is exactly what we also desire with that. So my company is a steering and founding member of Trust over IP. So I highly appreciate that you're leveraging that, and particularly also tying the bridge to the contract tracing. So this is totally a separate topic as of yet, but I think we need to see it all also in conjunction. And particularly contract tracing relies on everyone who's using functionality and providing functionality to be in fact compliant to the overall thinking. So what do I mean with that? So contract tracing requires that the software that you use is in fact behaving as it is designed. So you shouldn't change the rules for the contact tracing when the user is already using it and is frequently getting updates. Second, on the OS layer, you should not change the rules. So if Google or Apple decide that, in fact, if you have turned Bluetooth off, that it still works, then there's something off. And obviously, it also relies on the user being compliant. So you should not put your smartphone in a Faraday cage and omit it from communicating via Bluetooth, as you are then kind of hacking the system and not producing the right data. So I think that's very valuable that you're bringing all that in the context, and I'm really interested in seeing how that comes to life if we have these apps in productive use.
So Andre, that's excellent, and I would love to. It was Andre, right?
Yes, Andre.
So Andre, working closely with Drummond and the Trust over IP team, and Again, part of what I'm interested in doing is also simultaneously accelerating the work of what we're calling the Internet of Education within the Trust over IP Foundation as well, because the same technology or unverifiable credential for test results is obviously what we want to be doing within an academic setting as well, so that we can enable more personalized competency-based learning outside of physical settings.
Thank you. And we are soon running out of time, but still have a couple of minutes for maybe one comment or one question. Temo mentioned that it was a very useful presentation. Any other comments or reflections? All right. So if there is nothing more to say at this moment, I traditionally would like to, of course, invite you to continue discussion and continue exchange on MyData global Slack, Corona data. So please join. I think Greg is still not there, because every time I want to tag you, I cannot find you, so welcome. Please find your way. I joined MyData community, and also Andre and all our speakers are there. And I also see on the chat that some of our other presenters would like to continue discussion. So Corona data channel on Slack, this is the place to be. This is alive and very dynamic and active 24/7. And our next call, and the last call before the summer break, will be on 4th of June. So in 2 weeks on 4th of June at the same time. We have already some ideas for the presenters. I will make sure that the agenda is published as soon as possible, and also the registration is open. And with this, I would like to thank you all. Thank you to our presenters for sharing your work and for doing this very important work. Thank you to all the participants for spending this time with us. And thanks also to all listening, watching us, or rewatching us on Twitter, for also taking this time. I think this was the time well spent. So I wish you a beautiful day or a nice evening. Good night. And
Thank you.
yeah,
Nice
please.
to meet you all.
Kiddos,
Look forward to
couple.
working with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.